welcome back to the TDC Group Auditorium. I hope you enjoyed the break. We are now ready to start the third session of today. And without further ado, I would like to welcome our moderator for the session, journalist and anchor at TV2 News, Aarhus Symposium.
Okay, I'll start out, and I know Matias is listening. How many of you use GoMore? Wow, that's nice. So you know that this is a social platform that they use for their business, making it able to people to use transportation in a cheap and easy way. And the goal of Matias and his company is to be the go-to company when you need transportation. I don't know how many years ahead we talk now, but that's the main goal. And Matias is CEO of a company who has been running for only 3 years in the shape it has now. So what Matias is going to talk about here is how did GoMore get there, where you are now, and what kind of business do you want to build in the future. So, Matias Møl Dalsgaard.
Thank you. And the sound is working. Thank you, Aarhus. Yes, that's true. That's what I'm going to talk about. I was told that one thing is that I studied at Aarhus University myself. When I did that like 10 years ago, Aarhus Business School and Aarhus University was not the same, but now it's, everything is the same. In Aarhus I'm learning, so I'm a little like back to my own school here. And I was also told that there were going to be many, and I can see that that's the case, many students in the audience, so I thought it would be worth sharing the history, like what I've been going through since, and it's true, and I'm going to come back to the history in a little bit. It's true that it's only a little more than 3 years ago that we invested both our time and money in creating the current version of what is GoMore, but we have a prehistory actually of going back to when I was a student in Aarhus, where we made the first version of GoMore, which did not really, I mean, it was not a complete failure, because then there would not have been anything being GoMore today, but in many aspects it was a failure, and it didn't really grow as we had hoped, and therefore it was paused for some years. And I was doing other things, and then eventually we made GoMore in the shape you see today. So I'm going to talk a little about that. I'm going to talk about what kind of, as Anna said, what kind of company we're trying to create, like what is our mission and vision in terms of, what is it we're giving to the world here, and what do we want to accomplish, and also just share some thoughts and experiences with you about how it actually is to run a company and build a company, just assuming that many of you are having similar plans with your lives, or at least would be interested in hearing about it. So that was the idea, and then just when entering this stage, Aarhus was asking me, who photoshopped this sign over the lakes in Copenhagen into the PowerPoint slide. It's not photoshopped, it's true, it's there. There's going to be, for 100 years, I used to say, if you know Copenhagen well, most of you, or some of you hopefully do, there's Irma-hønen over the lakes, and there's also going to be the GoMore smile for the next 100 years, smiling over the lakes in Copenhagen. And when we have enough money, we're also going to put a big smile up over Aarhus, but we didn't get there yet. So, I'm going to share some messages actually, like coming out of the experience I've had with both not succeeding and then succeeding better with creating this kind of company. So one first message is that you don't always know when you have the $1 million idea. So, I have often been asked the question, why does GoMore work? Like, why do people really want to do what they're doing at GoMore, which is share their cars when they're driving themselves, and of course also share their cars when they're not driving through our peer-to-peer rental model. But I think the better question actually is, why did it not work earlier? Because I actually think, okay, I say you don't really know when you have $1 million idea. That means you don't know when the business is going to work, but you might have a very good idea that you just don't have the right timing for. And I think that was the case when we first started with doing ride sharing in Denmark in 2005. when you look at how cars are being used, and that was exactly the same back in 2005, they are standing still more than 23 out of 24 hours per day, just not being used, being idle, just standing there, non-use capacity. And then when they finally are being used, there's just one person sitting in them on average. It's 1.3 persons in Denmark exactly. When you do the math, calculate a little in your heads, you will understand that or see that that actually means that this resource, being a car, is utilized less than 1%, 1 hour, less than 1 hour out of 24 hours, and only one person sitting in it when it's driving. Less than 1%. Put in other words, it means that you buy a car for 100,000 crowns, but you get only value of 1,000 crowns out of it. Like really, really bad for the consumer, really bad for society, lots of congestion in the streets, or just no place to park, and very bad for the environment because it takes up a lot of resources producing all these cars. So sharing cars has just always been a good idea, but people didn't really want to do it 10 years ago. Now they do want to do it. We got the idea. We were two students from Aarhus, one doing his PhD and I doing my master's degree in philosophy. Actually, I did not go to business school. I studied literature and philosophy. Then later I worked at McKinsey and I only worked with business school people. I guess most of you are business school people here in the room. Okay, we got the idea of doing ride sharing in Germany where we saw it was actually working. Germany is a special case here because in all other countries, ride sharing only really started working during the last 5 years. And I'm going to come back to in a little bit why I think it's now working. But Germany is a special case. And we say, hey, people that are driving together, that's really nice. You know, let's go back and do the same for Denmark. And that's what I tried to do. And then when I was writing my master's thesis coming back to Aarhus, I found during that year a programmer and a designer. Actually, I'm going to share that with you now. Building. This first version of GoMore. Of course, there might be many answers to why people were not using this service back then. Remember, I mean, this is like Stone Age, Internet Stone Age. This was actually a creative website back then. I had a girlfriend, not a girlfriend, but a friend being a girl. She was an architect and designer here in Aarhus. She would like to do or learn to do internet design. So she was taking a course in internet design, and then we made this one together. And I found a datalogy, like computer science student in my dorm. I lived in Universitetsparken here in Aarhus, who programmed the back end. And then after, like he said, that would take 14 days. It took 9 months. But then eventually, when I was graduating, we were able to launch this website. Okay, we actually got some good PR. We were quite good, and that was me. I was good and also lucky getting some PR. I was on morning TV, I was in the news, I was also on the radio. And that meant that we actually got some users, we got some attention. We also very shortly after got an investment from Den Blå Avis, actually like way back before Den Blå Avis became eBay. And I'm not going to go further into the details there, but it's just like, you know, some things went well, but people were not really using it. So not a complete failure in the sense that I was on TV, we got an investment and so on, but people didn't really use it. And I concluded that Danes, they're just not as social as the Germans, or not as rational as the Germans. You know, Germans, they meet and they do meaningful things together. Danes, like very private, egotistic people who just, you know, don't really like strangers. That was my conclusion. Maybe it was true, I don't know, but what's definitely true is that has changed a lot since then, and I think actually our culture has changed a lot since then, and that's due to social media, as I see it. Back when we were launching this website, like finding or meeting a stranger online was a little like putting ads in a newspaper in the 80s saying that you would like to meet someone. Okay, it's strange and it's weird, and you don't really, you know, probably don't really want to meet the people using such services. That was a little the mentality around it, and it was something you always had to explain to people, like, why is this not dangerous? Why can you trust it? And I was actually really downplaying the social part of it. I was saying like, yeah, but you don't really need to talk to strangers, you know. Don't worry about it. Okay, you're going to travel with strangers, but it's not important. You know, it's just transportation. It's actually also what the text is saying. I was reading it when preparing for this talk here. You know, rejsen er ny hver gang, men et er sikkert, alle kommer billigt frem. You know, you save money, really good. Don't worry about the rest. But the thing is that people, they worried about the rest, and it was a negative factor, the social factor. Now, after social media, and then the explosion also of sharing economy in general, which I think would not have happened without social media. Meeting people online is actually both a nice and pleasant and safe thing, and I would actually, in general, if I know a lot about a person's online behavior and profile, like his or her Facebook profile, LinkedIn profile, Twitter account, you know, whatever people are having, I would trust this person more than actually if I had a lot of other kinds of data on this person. Actually, just on a side note to that, we have some problems when we're renting out cars. Like we have the peer-to-peer rental model now, people renting out cars, and we run into exact the same challenges as traditional car rental does, that sometimes there's someone entering your shop that you really, really don't want to have in your shop, and he's not returning the car. I would actually rather see this person's LinkedIn profile than have his CPR number. You know, you can have a lot of data on a person, but if you want to know about a person's behavior, you actually want to see what is their profile like online. So it was just an example of how our online profiles are saying something about what kind of people are we, and are we someone that you would like or dare to meet in real life. So I think that the reason why we have a sharing economy boom and GoMore is both like riding on a wave, but also being part of creating, or we're contributing to creating that wave. I think that's due to the fact that we have the social media now. So sharing the car was always meaningful, but people didn't really like it. They didn't really dare to, and they didn't really have the technology to do it as easily as they do it today. Now it's different, and what was then a good idea is now a good idea plus being a good idea with the right timing. Okay, so it's a very different world to have such concepts in today. Okay. Let me know when I have talked for too long.
That's fine.
I said I wouldn't talk so long because I actually like discussion. It's fun. It's also to hear thoughts from you guys.
We just have 3 questions here, so.
Okay, good. But sometimes, I get carried away and just keep talking. So it's better someone stops me. Okay. I said before that in the beginning, the social dimension was something we were downplaying. Don't worry, you don't really need to talk to each other. It's just transportation, you save money. It's fine. Okay. That was a very negative and very defensive way, in a way of promoting what is actually a social concept. And but I felt we were forced to do it because I felt that people didn't really appreciate the social dimension so much. That changed a lot since then, and what we have learned since then is that people actually appreciate what we're doing exactly because it's social. We stand for something social. And when I was showing the sign with the GoMore smile over the Copenhagen lakes just before, when we have the smile, you also see it there in a small version here down the corner. When we have the smile as our logo now, that is exactly because we have discovered that we're not a transportation brand. We're also not really a tech brand. We build really good technologies and we have an incredibly good technology team, but we're not as such a tech brand. We are a social brand. People, they like us and they are advocates for us, like good ambassadors for what we're doing, because they think we represent something positive in their lives. It's just nice that you're actually able to meet a stranger and have a pleasant experience and a good transportation experience with this person if you're doing ride sharing. And if you're doing rental, it's nice that you can live in a neighborhood and suddenly you get to know people in your neighborhood, either because you rent their car or because you're renting your car out to people in the neighborhood. I've been both renting out my own car a lot, and I have been also ride sharing a lot. We still have also some programmers working here from Aarhus, and I have family also. All my family is in Jutland. So I often cross the country in my car and have passengers with me. And I just always really enjoy the experience. So that I do, and I do rental. And I think I probably rented out my car like 100 times over the last couple of years. And one thing I have noticed there when renting out my car is that I become a little more happy as a citizen. You know, suddenly I belong to society or to the neighborhood that I'm part of in a way that I didn't do before. Modern life is normally organized in both there's work time and there is a spare time. And you live in a big city where you don't know people, only you know your closest friends or you know people that you work with. Like the old version of life was more that everything was a mix, you know. You're both working and being social at the same time in a smaller society where you actually know people. And I often feel that coming with the sharing economy concepts that we're coming with, we're actually recreating like the village life, the old-fashioned kind of social life within the cities or in the cities. And I actually think that's part of why people like what we stand for as a brand. Of course, there's money to be saved on renting out your car, and it's just a good offer if you want to rent a car. But there's an experience or experiential dimension to what we're doing that is actually being really supportive of people's experience, or really being a favorable dimension of people's experience of using GoMore. So that's something we have discovered along the way. Not something we knew up front, where we were more like, people can save money, and that's smart. Then we have discovered that we actually are, you know, a brand and we're a social brand, and that has a value in itself. When we have the smile as our logo, I said it's because we're a social brand, and what it actually means is that you see the smile because you meet a person when you're using GoMore. It's the person who's welcoming and helping you, so it's a smile. It's not a laugh because you don't have to be extremely happy, you just have to be nice and helpful to each other. You meet a person, you don't meet a company, so it's hand-drawn or homemade, that's what it stands for. It's not a corporation or a big company you meet. It's a smile, it's a private individual who's helping you. That's why we have the smile, and it's something we have only during this year actually introduced as our logo. We had the name and the logo font for the name, but this symbol is something that actually took quite a while to come up with, because there's a lot of understanding on our side going before we were actually able to arrive at this extremely simple result, but actually standing for history or story that is quite well, to me interesting, but also meaningful for what we're doing. So this is what we look like today. You see quite a difference from this 2005 website that we originally launched. App is becoming more and more important for us. So around 50% of our traffic is now on app. And 50% being on web. We just have a photo of the website here. I thought it was just worth sharing a little bit about, you know, what is this company today, and what does it mean to run such a company. Just some simple numbers first. We are in 5 countries. We have 1.5 million members. Between 100,000 and 200,000 people are actually traveling every month with GoMore and ride sharing. And we have around 10,000 rental days per month. And we also have, and I don't know if you're all aware of that, we have a leasing concept that has become really, really popular over the last 1 to 2 years here in Denmark, but also now growing in other markets. Just briefly on the leasing concepts, so you can all understand what a good offer it is and go out and buy a car afterwards. We had the idea all along that if we could also provide people with cars that were like born to be shared, then we would both feed cars into the system and good cars into our system, and also really give a good offer to people in general using our service. So we came up with the idea of now we are not the only one having this product any longer, but I think we're actually the first ones in the market coming out with the idea where you can go to GoMore. Like if you don't have a car, you have been using GoMore maybe as a passenger, or you've been renting a car, but now you would like to have your own car. We say, hey, go to GoMore, order a car, you get it, right away, no down payment, and on a 12-month contract, and everything included. And you can then rent out your car also when you don't use it yourself. So you can actually have a car for free if you rent it out between 8 and 10 days per month. What people they do on average is that they rent it out between 4 and 5 days per month, so they cover half their cost of having a car. So it means you don't need to have money in the bank to get started. It's very good for young people who are just getting their first car, and you can have it for free or for almost free if you're actually actively renting it out. So that is just working very well as an add-on to our ride sharing and our rental concepts. And we have around 2,000 of these leasing cars on the streets in Denmark right now, and I think we're going to have many thousands over the coming years. We have a total plan of putting 100,000 cars of these cars on the streets in Europe by 2020. And alone in Denmark, we could probably end up between 10 and 20,000 cars if we can just source enough cars. They're so popular. There are so many people who want these cars, but we're actually struggling catching up with the supply. So this is what we're doing: ride-sharing, rental, and leasing. And what I spend my like when we look at the company, we are product, we are marketing, and we are customer service, and then some administration stuff, and I'm partly part of that. But the way I see it is that we have to take our brand extremely seriously. So I say marketing and communication is extremely important, and that has to go together with our product. So we are product and we are brand. Like that's what we really are. And then we need to take very well care of our customers at the same time. So we have quite a lot of people in our customer care and customer experience department, as we call it. We are around 60 people altogether. We are in Copenhagen, a few in Aarhus. There's an office in Madrid and a small office in Paris right now. Norway and Sweden, we manage from Denmark. We have a few. We're still not big in Norway and Sweden, and we're investing more in the other markets, but we are there, and we're having Norwegian and Swedish people working with us from the office in Copenhagen. Okay, that's a little about where we are and what kind of company we are today. So I'm going to go a little faster on the last 3 slides here. And this is a little more about sharing just my own personal experiences with doing what we're doing. I think if some of you are considering starting a business either now or later when you graduate, you should just do it, honestly. It's a lot of fun, and you don't need an education actually to do it. It's just good. I mean, the more experience you have, of course, it's going to help you. But I've had this weird experience with I mean, there are different histories, right? There's the early history and there's the later history. Now, if we just look at the later history of running and building this kind of company, it has puzzled me all along that my job is changing all the time. It's a little like I have a feeling I'm doing everything that no one else is doing, and I'm just trying to always see, what's the next thing I should do. So whenever we identify an area, like we need to develop an app, we need to develop a website, we need to have customer service, we need to have marketing, we define these things as areas, and then when we can afford it, we find people and normally really, really good people to take care of these different areas. But then being the CEO a little means that you're just moving all the time. And things I was doing last year, I'm not doing now because someone else is doing it. But that also means that you're just doing a lot of weird and dirty things. You're both the one who's supposed to make sure that we have funding for the company, we have a strategy and a plan, and we know where we're going. But you also take care of a very simple thing when no one else is doing it. And that's a little the life, I think, of what it is to be a CEO of a company. Probably always the case to some extent of any company, but definitely when you are in a growing company, you have to accept that, it's just like free floating in a way, and you never really know what's going to happen tomorrow, but just pretend that things are in good order and don't tell anyone that you're really, really confused about what you're doing. That's not good, because then everybody else gets confused. So that's the life, but if you can live with that, then it's good. And I personally, so I was not only studying in Aarhus, I'm also a PhD from Aarhus, and I was teaching at Aarhus University. That's something I've been doing, and I've also been a consultant at McKinsey & Company for some years. And both the university and McKinsey, they have that in common, that they're very, very rigid systems. There's only one way to progress, and it's like, McKinsey is like up or out. So if you don't progress, you're just going to go out. And actually the university is a little bit of the same, because it's either up or depressed, at least. Right. And you also get depressed even if you go up, right? So it's not a lot of fun, actually. So very, very like rigid systems where you know what's the way ahead, and there's only one way to move forward. For some, that's good. I don't think it's really, really good for anyone, but some they like it more than others, and I really, really don't like it. So people, they often ask me if I'm not stressed by, or if I don't feel it's like really, really risky to build a company because you don't really know where you're going. But I just personally always felt that it was more risky having a job where there's only one way forward, and you weren't quite sure that you're actually going to go that way, right? So you could lose your job. Business is more fun, it's more open. And if someone thinks you're just really stupid or he doesn't want to work with you, you just work with somebody else. That's not something you can do in McKinsey or at the university, right? You have to follow the path. So even though it's a little confusing and stressful, I actually enjoy it and relax also, funnily enough, much more than I would do if I was in a different kind of environment. Looking ahead a little bit, before we continue with questions, we arrived at a point now where we have a company, as I said, with quite a few employees, and we have a product that's working and hundreds of thousands of people using it, but we are still really, really small. I think not only as a company, but as a phenomenon in general. As Anders was saying in the beginning, we have the ambition of really being a mainstream means for transportation in all the markets we operate in. And not only that, actually, I also would like to be a cultural factor in the countries where we are. And of course, Denmark is the most important country for us, still, because that's where we're most progressed and our brand is the strongest. So I think we, also going back to the numbers I was mentioning in the very beginning, when you look at how cars are actually being utilized, if we can keep coming up with better and better ways of connecting people with idle resources, there is so much more business to be made still. And I think we're only really, really seeing the beginning of what this can become. Also, when new technologies arrive, we're going to, of course, try to take advantage of them. And out in an even further, like distant future, we're going to have self-driving cars. I don't see why they wouldn't all be shared at the end of the day. So I think we are really, really early stage in what we're doing. And we see, there's like a million things we would like to do, but I also believe that, if we can keep up the pace in what we're doing, we're also going to get there eventually. Last slide. If I were 25 today, what would I do? I would experiment. That's what I was thinking about. Really try to, if you're interested in building business, don't spend money before you have seen it work at some level. It could be a very, very small scale. Don't talk too much about raising funds, so you need a big strategy plan before you have actually tested something out, seen it work just on a few customers. we were actually, and it's not something I knew when I was 25 and started doing GoMore in the first place. I was really, really cautious with the way we spent money. And we got this, maybe ugly, but whatever, website built just with our own pocket money and paying like student friends to build the first version. But that actually meant that when it then later started working, actually had a company that we're not completely lost, because we didn't in the first beginning raise money from investors who was then dissatisfied with what we were doing and eventually forcing us to sell it or shut it down. No, it was just there. And then when time was right for it, we could actually use it for something good. That was not part of a plan. I mean, if there were a plan, it really were to grow much faster than we actually did. But at least what we did cleverly was that we made it work before really starting spending more money. So if you go out and build business, try to do that. And also, it's also just extremely difficult, honestly, to raise money if you haven't proved some first results. So just be careful. Like in business terminology, you just call it lean startup. See some results, sell something before you actually build for it or invest in it. It's an approach we're also still trying to use today when we launch new business. So for instance, with the leasing concept I was telling you about just before, when we launched that, we had 10 cars, okay, but it was not cars that we had bought or anything. It was just a leasing company that had said they would deliver 10 cars. So we just put cars on the website and we tried to sell them and see what happened. And then actually we had 500 cars ordered the first day. So we said, okay, people actually like the idea. It's not just us who have gone crazy here. It's a really, really good offer. So 500 cars in one day, I don't think, normally there's not 500 cars being sold in the whole of Denmark in one day. Okay, so there was really an interest in this concept. It was a meaningful concept, but we hadn't spent money on it before we actually saw that the market was really, or people were really interested in this. So just trying to keep that mentality, and also don't be afraid just to experiment. Then the thing is, when you don't spend too much money, you also don't have to be too afraid of experimenting and failing and then trying again. So do it. It's fun. I enjoy making business. I think it's a fun life, and if you will think so too, then just do it. Definitely. That would totally be my advice. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Matias. There are quite a few questions about the company and your leadership, your education, and we'll start out with your company. Quite a few actually in the audience is a bit worried about the future of your business model. Let's have the first question here from Thor. Elon Musk's vision is to build a Tesla car sharing service that invades Uber's territory. Disruption or opportunity for GoMore?
Yeah, it's probably both. Like it's a threat and it's an opportunity, as I see it. So when we look at cars today, they are. You say there's a general trend going from ownership to access. That's a trend we're also part of when we're saying you should lease a car, you should not own a car. It's really just a lot of hassle and not a very good business actually owning a car. So that's one trend. Okay, and I see all cars being leasing cars over time, and I see us actually delivering many of these cars. Then let's say that the self-driving cars, they come a little later, but it's probably going to be some years until it's actually a mainstream phenomenon, by which I mean the kind of car that most people are using, and it's actually like fully self-driving, like without needing a driver, like ever. I think it's quite a distant future, but it's a really, really interesting future. There's going to be a lot of innovation around cars before we really get there. But when we get there, you still like to share your car, right? I mean, okay, if everybody on the planet is driving Teslas, and Teslas are the only cars in the streets, and they have their own car sharing service, okay, then life is going to be a little tough. But that's never going to happen. There's going to be multiple car brands as it is today. And if we say it's meaningful to share cars, today, it's just as meaningful to share cars when they become self-driving. And you need a community and a platform for doing that. So if we can keep being a leading community and platform for sharing of cars, it's just good that they become self-driving, because then they become easier to share. But when we look a little further down the line, I think it would probably, well, it's something we don't know, but I think it's quite likely that it will not be individual people actually leasing the self-driving cars, but more fleets owned by companies, and they're just circling all the time and taking people with them. But you still need a platform and a community. So for me, yeah, it's a threat if we are slow or if we cannot fund innovation around it, but it's definitely also an opportunity if we are fast enough and we seize this opportunity before someone else does it. So yeah, I like Tesla and Musk. I'm really impressed by what they're doing, but I don't think they're going to be the only car brand on the planet.
But how do you see the social element with people meeting up, sharing cars or sharing rides? How do you see that connect to a future with the driverless cars?
But it's still, a car is a resource, right? And it's expensive. It doesn't matter if someone is driving it or not. The question is, how can you use that resource better? Mm-hmm. And if you're going to share it, you need a platform to share it on. And only the better if that platform is also part of a community where people trust each other and they are rated and they have a history, as they have on GoMore. So I don't see this at all as being something that is running counter to what we're actually trying to do. But there's always a risk that someone builds a better product than what you have yourself. So we need to move fast still.
Let's take some water. I'm just trying to highlight this one. How can your company survive when people are able to organize similar transport through Facebook groups, etc., for free? I mean, are you depending on people being lazy and not able to organize themselves? Is that your business model?
Yeah.
Okay, next question.
There are two things. In Spain, where we're quite big on ride sharing, so we have 800,000 members on ride sharing, and in the range of 5,000 people per day traveling with GoMore. We actually give our ride sharing service away for free, primarily because we're competing with a big French platform for ride sharing. They're also in Spain. And they're charging a high fee, and they have more money than we have, so they invest a lot in marketing. They educate the market, and we get a lot of users from them. And we can give it out for free or partly for free. It's partly free, because if you pay cash, it's no fee on it. Cash in the car. If you pay online, we take 1 year fee. But most people pay cash. But we do that because we see ride sharing as actually being what is generating our community. And driving traffic to our rental and our leasing concept, where the money and the transactions are much bigger. So we don't rely so much on ride sharing actually as a source of revenue. Not in the big strategic picture. In Denmark, it is true that ride sharing is a substantial part of our business, because we're charging 10% there as a fee. But in Denmark, there's no competition on ride sharing, and also we're offering 10% is much less, by the way, than the French platform is charging. We're really nice and fair people. But that being said, I'm quite happy. I know there are many Facebook groups, people going from Aarhus to Herning or Aarhus to Odense, whatever they're doing. But when these groups become big enough, it's just completely impossible to have an overview of who is going where. So you need a better tool for doing this when there's a volume enough. So I don't see this as a threat. I see it more as something that's driving the phenomenon of ride sharing in general.
Okay, a question about your education, your background in philosophy. How does that qualify your jobs in McKinsey as a consultant and your present job in GoMore?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's just take McKinsey first, because the answers are quite different. McKinsey is briefer. McKinsey it's an elite, but also an American, like liberal institution. Liberal in the sense that they don't really care what you have studied, as long as you went to a good university and you're really, really good at being a student there, you're working hard, and you're willing to work hard also in McKinsey. That's kind of their philosophy, right? So I was actually afraid that I would not be able to find a job after I graduated, because I was being told that you end up unemployed when you study literature and philosophy. It's really bad. So people get very scared when they study these things, or when they come closer to graduation, they start being scared. And actually, it was part of why I also wanted to launch GoMore back then, because I thought, okay, I have to prove to people that I'm capable of doing other things than reading books. But McKinsey, special place, they can afford to educate and train people in a way that not so many companies can, and they have a very cool approach to recruitment. So they say, good young brains, just come and work hard, and that's actually all you need. GoMore, that's I would say I take a lot of experience with me from McKinsey. It was a really, really good school, a good place to learn business and discipline and organization. But as a McKinsey consultant, you can never create. I mean, some people can, but when you look at the skill set that you develop in a company like McKinsey, it doesn't it doesn't teach you to build something that people like. Creating something that people like, that's a creative thing. And I studied philosophy, but I was actually writing books. I wanted to be a writer, and then later I became more of a philosopher, and I was writing philosophical, but also literary books and texts. So there's this drive to create things, put something out there that you think would make the world a better place somehow. Things that you like, and that's a creative effort. So I actually think these two things, they just come very well together. In being a CEO of a company that is both a product company, building products that are meaningful and creative for people out in the real world, and also having the knowledge and the discipline coming from a training like the one you get at McKinsey, that teaches you what it means to drive a company professionally. When I was still a student in 2005 and we launched the first version of GoMore, it was quite clear to me also that I didn't really know what it meant to build a company from there. So that was also part of the reasons why I actually went to McKinsey rather than staying and keep working on the company at that time.
Okay. We have a question here.
Thank you. I would like to challenge your view on Facebook groups not being a challenge
for
your company. And the way I see it personally is that we see a development of app saturation, that we have so many apps on our phones now, having many different purposes, that we now see some apps getting integrated into each other. We now see Facebook is doing more than just being a social network, but now we can also do payments together. So they move to the market of, for example, mobile pay. So don't you fear that big companies like Facebook would take over your function as a sharing application for car owners?
Of course, I cannot really know what happens in the future. I see it as more likely that Google, with the investments in maps and also the app Waze, is more like closer to moving into a shared car space. We're doing different things. We're doing rental and ride sharing and leasing, right? When it comes to rental, I'm not worried at all about these things, because it's just a very complex thing, and it requires insurance, and insurance is a national thing, and you cannot just build a global model for it. So that's more complex. Ride sharing, a little bit different. I think if we can keep offering a better service than what's on Facebook, then we can keep growing in the market. I still think that I'm not too worried about it, to be honest, but you might prove me wrong later. It's just that when you look back, like Google, they have been saying they wanted to deliver pizzas, and Facebook said they want to do whatever during the last 20 years. They all say they want to do everything, but no one is ever doing everything. Companies are doing different things, and if you keep being good at what you're doing, then I'm not so worried that a big platform, they're not just going to, Amazon, they're also not going to do ride sharing. They might say so one day, but they're not going to do that. They have other things to do. And I think therefore, I mean, that's the reason why there are many companies in this world after all, because we keep focusing on very different things. So it's not a main concern, but we can come back in a year and see if I change my opinion.
People power is a theme of this session, so let's take a question here. Anonymous again, how would you connect the theme power to GoMore, your personal power and the company's power?
So there are different kinds of power. There's a power that we're giving to the people, where we're empowering them in a way to do business and transactions with each other. It's a very funny thing is that we are liked a lot, normally political, both by parties on the right side of the middle and on the left side. On the left side, because we stand for something social and it's actually good for the environment that people are sharing their cars. On the right side, more because of free market perspectives on what we're doing. We're liberating people so that they can themselves become small business people through our platform. Of course, they're not doing big business, but they're doing small business. And that's empowering them. I really mean that, honestly. It plays a role in many people's lives, what we're offering. Then there's the thing that we are becoming kind of a political power, in the sense that now we have 500,000 people using GoMore in Denmark. That's 10% of the population. So we have a voice. We can speak to a lot of people, and a lot of people care about what we are doing. And that, I would say, politically is playing a bigger and bigger role, at least in the sense that we're getting more and more attention from people at Christiansborg, who are now working on regulations around what we are doing, but also really listening to what we, what we think would be a good way to regulate.
Do they listen to you? Are you lobbying and pursuing your goals? Are they listening to you, the politicians?
Yeah, I think they are. They are also, like a few weeks ago, the Minister of Taxation, Carsten Lauritsen, was visiting our office. Next week I'm meeting with Troels Lund Poulsen. We're doing that all the time, and it's not only us contacting them any longer. It changed, so it goes both ways now. It's a very different situation, and I think they're very much, in general, in favor of trying to support this, because they're really interested in seeing this still playing a role, and a better and better role in the society. That's another power dimension, and then of course there's the power of being CEO in a company, and that's probably what's taking up most of my mental capacity. Like finding out what does it mean, or how do I best work with people, and yeah, it's a long discussion, but
make it short.
Yeah, okay. One thing that I think I've been really good at, to be very honest and not very modest, is to find extremely smart people who are not only smart at what they're doing, but also are kind of I would say visionary or interested in life and society and politics in general. I learned at McKinsey to recruit very ambitiously, just the best brains and people who are really willing to work hard. What they don't always recruit at McKinsey is people who also have more interest in life than just working hard in business. That can be a little boring also sometimes. Okay, but if you have also an interest in culture and society, you have a group of people who are they have fun while they're doing what they're doing, and we don't become a dull and boring brain that can only speak like a business. We mean something politically and culturally. We participate in the world we live in while we try to work hard and fast on building the company. So I'm really proud of this group of people, and I'm having fun working with the group of people I'm with now.
Okay, let's have a question here. Just trying to highlight it. From Johan, other than economic profit, what is your motivation for creating GoMore? How much does social impact and profit matter to you? You've been talking about a greater meaning in your work life when we discussed it yesterday. What is that kind of greater meaning? Can you tell something about that as well?
Yeah. It's actually quite complex because so when I worked at McKinsey, and I think that that's the case in most of the business world, like it's a little like either you do business or you do something good like pro bono, you support something non-profit or not-for-profit. And I really don't like not-for-profit, if I can start with saying that. Don't quote me for it, but I think it's not, well, there are many good cases, and I also support good courses in general, of course, but if you're just doing something not for profit, it's not something sustainable, you know? It's just like you're losing money over time and eventually you're going to run out of money. If you're just doing things for business, you're just going to have a very boring life on the other hand. So what I'm really trying to do is going back a little to what I said about people before, is to create an environment where we actually have a perspective on what it means to live a rich and real life while we're also doing what we are doing. So meaning for me is not that just that we have like one special good cause where we are saving some, you know, or fixing some specific thing on the planet. It's more that we are being part of the culture that we live in and speaking with a positive voice into that culture. And what we're doing, for instance, on the people side, like in terms of how we speak to our users, is that we try to be honest and direct and not bullshitting about what we are doing. So for instance, we have never tried to establish ourselves as a brand that's saving the environment. Not because we don't like I really think we should take well care of our environment. But I don't want to be a holier than thou brand who are just there based on a claim that you are fixing, like something very specific, you know, because it's not, you cannot really be sure that what we're doing is good for the environment, to be honest. It probably is, and it hopefully is, but it's not something that I think you can build a business on. Well, sometimes you can, but not in our case. You have to make a consumer brand, by which I mean you have to create something that people really like to use and they feel that is playing a positive role in their life while they're using it. So therefore meaning is a really, really complex thing, because I cannot just point to one thing and say that this is the one thing I work for and that generates meaning in my life. No, but if we are ongoingly putting products out there and communicating to people as if we believe they are smart and giving them something that we hope will play a good role in their life, then I think I'm having a kind of work life that is both exciting and fun and challenging at the same time.
Okay, we have time for a few more questions. One of them is, how do you see transportation in 2020? How should GoMore transform itself to follow up with or create the trends?
Right now we have some 1,000 ride sharings per day and a few hundred rentals per day. In a country with 6 million people, that's actually nothing when you think about it. So I really think part of what we have to do is to make more people use our existing service, and also the people using our existing service becoming more active. What I would like to see, for instance, is that instead of renting cars 2.5 times per year, as people actually do when they rent cars on GoMore, I would like them to sell their cars and then rent cars every month or several times per month when they actually need a car. So completely change behavior around car usage. That would mean a lot, of course, to us as a business, but it would definitely also mean a lot to society if we could make people, sell their cars and just become active users of mobility services, and GoMore just being one of them in general. So now I'm not even talking innovation right now, like heavy innovation. I'm just talking change behavior and use the products that are already there. Then we're going to come with mobile locks and lots of services supporting the sharing of the car. which I think, is just that is gonna make these concepts just even more mainstream. Now it says 2020 up there. I don't think that the self-driving cars will be playing any significant role in society by then. So I would more say innovation around these things that I just mentioned now than the self-driving cars in 2020. But still, really being a factor. Something people are using generally and on not a daily, then a weekly or monthly basis.
Okay, the next one is a tough one, Matias. Have you ever, between us, considered selling GoMore? Like selling your child, is it not? Mm-hmm. Could you do that? Or would you do that?
It depends. Right?
On what? The price, or
it depends on the price. It depends on the price, honestly, because we have investors and we have, we are business people also after all. But I would really, really not like to sell. As I say, it's a little contradictory what I'm saying here. But we have no plan on selling. And if there was an offer that was so good that we couldn't leave it, I think I would try to create something similar or something better, with that money, because I really like the company that we're creating here, and I like the products. So for me, the answer is no. Right now, it's no. I would say unless we arrive at some point where we say it's not really possible to raise funds or money more for what we're doing, or we're being beaten by Facebook or Uber or whatever, but that's not something I fear right now, because we're in completely different spaces than these other big actors in the market. But if we arrive at some point where we say, okay, now we cannot really grow this any further, then that might be the time to consider selling. Not only because I would, I want to grow, I want to keep evolving in what I'm doing. But I said we're recruiting a lot of smart people, and I promised them that we are a growing company, and that means we have a group of people we all expect to grow, and we want, and we work hard for it. If that story changes, then I think we could consider selling, but that's not where we are now.
And would you then do it all again? Do you have a new business idea in the drawer you pick up when you eventually sell GoMore?
I don't have a concrete plan right now.
But a tiny plan?
Not yet, but
okay.
We make plans very fast.
Okay.
Don't worry, we'll make a plan if we're forced to do it. No, I think honestly what I've been good at, and what people I work with are good at, is that we find relatively simple ideas, but then get something good out of them. It's not so much a lack of idea that people in general suffer from, but lack of both talent and execution and the right people in delivering on the plan you have. So. Yeah, we're going to see. We're going to see what happens.
But I tried to highlight a question here. It was a question about if you should sell GoMore, or the company should fail. Would you then try to start a new company, or back to consulting, or is it over with that?
I really like my life now. It's a little tough sometimes because I work a lot, but I really think it's a good life. I don't like being a consultant. I don't like being an academic, for that matter. I really don't like being an expert on something that is just, or not just, but that is working for others. It's just not very good for me, I learned. But I also have to work a lot. So I don't really know what I should do other than actually creating business again. So I think I would have to do it.
You're not the kind of guy who go to the golf course? Or?
No, I don't play golf. No, and I don't buy a Bentley or move to Marbella or something like that. No. Okay. Not at all. Okay, we have to round it up, but you have a final message or something you want to say to the audience, a good advice or something they can take with them from here? But I would really say if you have a dream or just an interest in creating a business, it's just the right time to do it now. I was still a student when I made the first version of GoMore. And it failed, but it meant that, first of all, that I learned a lot, and I actually also was a better business consultant later with McKinsey, because I had more commercial mindset than those who had not had such an experience, even though it was still a brief and not very successful experience. So it's just going to give you so much, and and also an energy that is hard to find in other jobs. There are many good jobs out there, and you can learn a lot from it. So it's not like business is the only, doing your own business is the only right thing to do. But if you would like to do it, I mean, just start doing it now, because it's also not going to get easier when you get older. Not at all.
Okay, thank you for all your questions, and thank you, Matias.
As for all of you, your fourth and final session will be in the Accenture Auditorium at 5 o'clock, but please do not hesitate to stop by the coffee lounge to talk with our partners and speakers. Thank you.